You were born into a world where pleasure is just one click away. You don't have to hunt. You don't have to wait. You don't even have to earn it, okay? All you need is a screen, a swipe, or a few empty words, and suddenly, you've got access to things that kings in history couldn't even dream of. Food that hits your dopamine like a drug. Images that hijack your brain. Bodies without connection. Sex without intimacy. Validation without vulnerability. And at first, it feels like freedom. You think, this is what power looks like. But deep down, something begins to rot. Because slowly, quietly, invisibly, every time you take the easy pleasure, you trade a piece of your strength. And you don't even notice it at first. You still go to the gym. You still make money. You still talk big. But inside, your soul is becoming soft. And that's the tragedy. No one talks about how easy pleasure makes strong men spiritually weak. Because when gratification is instant, discipline dies. When stimulation is constant, depth disappears. You start to fear stillness. You avoid silence. You lose your edge. The same man who once had fire now scrolls endlessly, hoping to feel something again. And it's not because he lacks ambition, it's because he's drowned in abundance. Nietzsche warned us about this. He didn't fear pain, he feared comfort. Because comfort lulls you, numbs you. It makes you forget who you are, okay? And that's what this world has done to you. It gave you everything except meaning. You can eat without earning your hunger. You can lust without loving. You can succeed without ever asking who you are. And that is how the masculine spirit dies, not in some great battle, but in 1,000 easy choices. Every time you reach for pleasure without purpose, you lose power. Not just physical power, but spiritual direction. You become a man who chases highs instead of building legacy, who avoids tension instead of growing through it, who flinches at boredom because he no longer knows how to create from it. You've been fed lies that say, follow your pleasure and you'll be happy. But what they didn't tell you is that pleasure without restraint is poison. It drains your hunger. It numbs your instincts. It strips you of the one thing that makes you a man, your ability to hold tension without collapsing. That's what strong men are made of. Not just muscle, not just money, but the ability to feel desire not obeyed, to want and wait, to delay gratification, not because you hate pleasure, but because you know it's more powerful when it's earned. That's how you build a spirit that doesn't break. It's a soul that doesn't vanish in comfort. It's in a manhood that doesn't need permission to rise. It's not that you're lazy, it's that your nervous system is burnt out from being constantly stimulated, from waking up to a screen, from feeding your mind with quick hits, from giving your body dopamine it didn't earn. And slowly, this becomes your baseline. You can't focus. You can't sit still. You can't go 5 minutes without checking something, tapping something, feeding the addiction that doesn't look like an addiction. And that's the trap. Pleasure that's available doesn't seem dangerous, but it is, because it reprograms your masculine core. You stop chasing death. You start craving the next hit. You become less man and more algorithm, reactive, impatient, always seeking stimulation, never satisfied. And the worst part, it doesn't feel like a crisis. It feels normal, but that numbness you carry, it's that dull ache in your chest. It's that quiet voice that says, you used to want more than this. That's your soul waking up. That's the part of you that remembers who you were before the world softened you. Because real masculinity isn't loud. It's not flashy. ID doesn't need validation. Real masculinity is restraint. X. The man who says no when the whole world says yes. It's the man who chooses depth over distraction. It's the man who doesn't chase pleasure because he spilled in something that means more. You were not made to scroll. You were not made to consume. You were not made to numb yourself with cheap highs and call it freedom. You were made to create, to suffer, to rise, to to carry something heavy and become someone worthy of carrying it. That's why you feel restless after pleasure, because you're not wired to be fed. You're wired to earn, okay? And every time you take the shortcut, every time you indulge the impulse, every time you lower your standard just because you can, you bury the king inside you just a little deeper. But he's not gone, waiting, watching. And when you finally stop feeding your distractions, when you finally sit in the silence and feel the weight of your emptiness, that S when he speaks, that's when the real you starts to wake up, and you realize strength was never about how much you could lift. It was about how much temptation you could resist. That's the discipline this world is terrified of, because a man who no longer bows to easy pleasure is a man who can be controlled. He doesn't buy what they sell. He doesn't chase what they dangle. He doesn't crave what's cheap. He wants the hard things, the slow things, the deep things. He doesn't just want to feel alive. He wants to become alive. The problem, isn't that pleasure exists. It's that you were never taught what to do with it. You were handed access without instruction, stimulation without purpose. You were raised in a world that said more is better, faster is success, easier is smarter. And somewhere in that noise, you lost something ancient. You lost a fire, to hunger. The spiritual edge that made your grandfather stand taller and your ancestors walk through storms with no one to cheer for them, because they didn't chase ease, they chased meaning. They knew discomfort was the price of becoming, okay? But you were sold comfort as a goal, not a reward, a goal. And when comfort becomes the goal, purpose dies. You start shrinking, stop taking risks. You become a man who avoids pain more than he chases greatness. And that's the moment you begin to feel weak, not physically, spiritually, because a man disconnected from struggle is a man disconnected from himself. Okay, here's the part they don't tell you. Your soul doesn't want more pleasure, okay? It wants more purpose. Your soul doesn't crave sex, it craves intimacy. It doesn't crave freedom, it craves structure. And until you give it that, it will keep crying in silence, through boredom, through distraction, through that constant, dull feeling of not enoughness, even when you're surrounded by everything. If you want to feel alive again, then stop feeding yourself what numbs you. Starve the easy things. Say no to what comes too quick, too cheap, too often. Reclaim your hunger, because a man who's always full becomes spiritually soft. Quote, a man who knows how to wait, to focus, to build, to sacrifice. That man becomes dangerous again, not to the world, to his limitations, okay? To his weakness, to the version of himself that keeps him average. And here's the secret. Your spiritual strength doesn't come from adding more. It comes from removing what drains you, from deleting the voices that keep you small, from walking away from the short-term hits so you can build long-term weight. You don't need another motivational video. You don't need another dopamine spike. You need silence. You need stillness. You need discipline, not as punishment, but as liberation. Because once you learn to control your impulses, you start to own yourself. And that's the foundation of every real man. It's not how loud he is, not how big his following is, not how many women he has had, but how deeply he has mastered his own inner fire. And if yours is dim, don't panic. Don't shame yourself. Stop feeding the things that smother it. Stop lying to yourself that you're just tired, when deep down, you know you've been hiding behind ease, behind softness, behind comfort. But now, the comfort is uncomfortable. And that discomfort is your wake-up call. So now what? You've seen the pattern. You've felt the emptiness. You've tasted the sweetness of easy pleasure and the bitterness it leaves behind. What do you do when you finally admit this isn't working? You rebuild. Not by burning your life down, not by blaming the world, but by facing the man in the mirror with brutal honesty and unwavering compassion. Because strength isn't about never falling. It's about choosing to rise without applause. And the man who rises after realizing he's been numbing himself, he's dangerous. Not because he's angry, but because he's awake. He sees that every easy pleasure was just a thief dressed in luxury, that every shortcut was robbing him of depth. And now he's done being robbed. He stops chasing what's free. He starts building what costs something, because greatness costs, discipline costs, integrity costs. But the cost of staying weak, it's your soul. In the world, Docent need more men who have things. It needs more men who are something. Men who can be trusted with pressure. Men who don't fold when things get quiet. Men who can sit in a room with themselves and not reach for escape. Men who turn down what's available, not because they're saints, but because they're building something sacred. You want your fire back? Then fast. From noise, from scrolling, from pointless attention. Let your hunger return. Let discomfort teach you again. Let boredom sharpen you. Because in a world where everyone is overstimulated, the calm man is a weapon. The focused man is a threat. The disciplined man is a leader. He doesn't need to chase, because he attracts. Because he's at home in himself. That's who you become when you stop feeding the beast of easy pleasure and start forging yourself into fires of purpose. You become a man who doesn't rise and fall with every impulse. You become grounded, clear, fierce, and finally, full. Not from what you consumed, but from who you became. And that man, T's not spiritually weak. He's spiritually invincible.